Hello, world. This is Hello Chaos, the podcast about the ups and downs, ins and outs, highlights, and low points of entrepreneurship. I am one of your hosts, Jennifer Oladipo, a.k.a. Jenno.
And I'm your other host, Jennifer Sutton, a.k.a. JJ. And we are here with Heather Leigh with Greenhaven Memorial Gardens. Welcome, Heather. Thank you
Heather.
for calling out of Elgin, South Carolina, right?
Correct. Yeah, we are about 30 miles northeast of Columbia.
So I was so fascinated to hear about your business. I mean, this is really like outside of the box for us in terms of, well, I guess we have a pretty good amount of variety usually.
Yeah, we've got a good, yeah.
But I have to say, this is the first one, I think, with bodies involved, potentially. So just tell us a little. Oh, go ahead.
I like to say we're outside of the casket. Oh, you go ahead with the body.
There you go. There you go. So just tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today.
One of the biggest questions I get all the time is, Heather, how in the world did you end up in the cemetery business? And I like to thank my mom for that. She was big in genealogy when I was growing up. So I was the little 5-6-year-old with the razor paper and the charcoal, doing the headstone rubs so that we could take them back home and identify the individuals. And the historical component to me was just fascinating, being able to research and read up on the individuals who made our community what it was, and the impact that individual had on their family and local businesses as well. And so my passion grew from out of that. And the running joke is that's where I learned my ABCs and numbers, was in a cemetery.
So you started this business on your own, or was this a family business hand-me-down?
No. So the Greenhaven was actually an established cemetery. It was started by a very large corporate conglomerate. And a lot of people don't understand how corporatized most cemeteries and funeral homes are. So in our particular area, I am one of a very, very small handful of privately owned perpetual care cemeteries. And so I took this particular cemetery over in 2014.
And what was what were you doing before, and how did this opportunity feel like the right one for you?
So I started in the cemetery business as a profession in 1986 in our small town, Washington, Pennsylvania, and it's a nonprofit historical cemetery that was started in 1864. And unfortunately, I just knew that the growth there was no longer going to excel for my particular achievements that I wanted. And I moved to South Carolina, and I had no idea how different the death care industry was in this particular area. And so I floated around for a while and finished my bachelor's and my master's degree. And just by happenstance, this particular cemetery was in the process of being developed when I moved here in the mid-90s. And so I kept watching it, and then just through some natural progressions and a happenstance, I was able to meet one of the new owners who had purchased it from a corporation, and I began working for them. And then it was a short-term situation for them. Unfortunately, one of the business partners became ill and has subsequently passed away. And then the other owner, he was like, Heather, I just need to do something different and get out. And I'm like, well, let's hatch a deal, and I'll take it over from there.
Wow.
And so, it's been a true blessing, and definitely when your calling is your calling, it is there for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a long road. If you could back up a little, though, you just mentioned that there are like some dramatic regional differences in the business.
Very much so. So what a lot of families don't understand, NPR did a big program on this about a woman going into one funeral home, and she stroked a check for like $30,000. If she would have had the opportunity to do some research, she would have found if she went to a locally owned and not a corporate owned funeral home, that it would have been significantly less. So I have a lot of flexibility without being stuck in a corporate box of saying, okay, a family gets to select from this, this, and this. I want to know, when a family comes to me, tell me about the person that's going to be in my care. That's the very first question I'm going to ask you. Tell me about that individual that's going to be in my care. Because at that point, I know how to move forward with potential products and services that are going to be needed. And then the second thing I tell my families is this: no matter what you pick, no matter what you select in products and services, it is not going to take away this, the hole in the heart. That is never going to fill that. That is a whole different process. So we are here today to get this part done, and then I walk the journey with you the whole way through. And that includes one of our most notable services is our development of headstones and how we personalize them. I spend a tremendous amount of time with a family designing the absolute perfect headstone for them. And who would have thought that my Art Institute of Pittsburgh training would have come in handy at designing headstones? So that's something that I thoroughly enjoy spending time with the family. And it's a very healthy process, a recovery process that works for our families.
Hey, Heather, you had talked about, you kind of call this the death care industry versus, I find that fascinating and real interesting. Is that your term, or is that really what all funeral homes and memorial gardens type, is that how you guys categorize yourself?
It depends upon, it could be a regional, some call it death care, some call it end of life. End of life to me, in my own vocabulary, basically is anything from the point of diagnosis of some terminal issue through whether they stay at home, medical care, end of life care, and then what I do at that point for the final resting space. So some of those terms are used interchangeably. And it depends upon what people are comfortable with. I actually know a funeral director kind of cracked me up. We were at a networking organization. He didn't say the word death, dead, or dying at any point in time. If you can't have a conversation and incorporate that word in one way or another, then you have some of your own issues that you need to still deal with.
So, what did he say? How did he get around it?
It was, I don't really remember. It was just, I sat there and we were writing, we were like bad little kids in school, writing notes back and forth.
He's never said death.
Right. It's like, he kept saying funeral services, so it's like, no, let's get very clear, because what we've done is we've sterilized through the process of moving family member into long care facilities or hospice centers, or we've really removed the death process from what it had been, and we're finding a huge disconnect with our individuals. I'll share a story with you from one of my students. I taught death and dying at Columbia College for a while. The medical profession never told them that her mother was in active dying process. And if they had known, they would have been able to make different decisions, as well as spend significant more time with her parent. And then next thing they know, they're planning her funeral. So there's this huge gap in how we can provide service to our families and having honest conversations. That to me is one of the biggest issues we have in educating our families. Like I said earlier, if you go out and buy a car, you pretty much know what model, make, and what you want the interior to look like. No one wants to have that conversation about, well, what do I want? Do I want traditional? Do I want green burial? Do I want cremation? What do I want? Because if I don't make those decisions, I hear this a lot. It won't matter. I'm dead. Well, you're right. It won't matter. You're dead. But it does matter to everybody else that's living. It's huge, because now you're making them strapped with a major financial decision. They don't know if you really wanted to be buried in a blue outfit, white outfit, or green outfit. And they're always going to be questioning, did I make the right decision?
Right.
Did I spend enough money? Did we do X? It's like, stop leaving your family saddled with those major decisions. I like to say that we help families build a legacy, not leave a burden.
That's such a go ahead.
Well, it's interesting
Yeah.
because I think that's we've had people talk about how founders don't want to have various conversations, whether it's like succession or things like that. And I think this is probably just another thing to add to the list. And I mean, now because I was thinking, well, I'll be dead, so whatever makes them happy, but but that's not the case. I guess what makes them happy is to know that they've fulfilled your wishes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, like you said, just the whole sterilization of having those direct conversations. I appreciate death care. It's very clear of what you're doing. And the other thing, Heather, you had mentioned, which I have never heard of, I guess, death care specialists talk about of, we're here to help you, bury and take care of your family member, and then we'll help you with the void in the heart. That I never thought that is something that I should expect from a funeral home or somebody of within your industry. Like, I thought it was okay. We got the urn, we got the flower, we've got the burial plot, whether it's in the wall or in the ground, and it's check the box, and now we're done. Is that because you're privately owned and smaller, or is that really what the industry provides as a service?
It depends when you say provide for service. And so, like, my families who we serve here, it's hilarious because they'll say, Heather, my car brought me here and I don't know why. Well, once we start sitting down and chit-chatting, then they start sharing. And I'm like, well, I know why your car brought you here, because this is her. And you don't have anywhere to go. And within my walls, in my four walls of my office, it's like, you can cry, scream, cuss, whatever you say in here is healthy, because what your feelings are natural and normal. And we get so many other people that, how many times have you heard or you said, hey, you need to be strong for others?
Yeah.
Why?
Right.
Why? Well, God called them to a better place. Well, why? The place was here beside me. Or, my favorite, I know how you're feeling. No, you don't. No, you do not. I do want to take a second and hop back to what you mentioned earlier on a succession plan for entrepreneurs. I will tell you, one of the worst things an entrepreneur cannot do is to have a serious succession plan and understand what is required. So not only do you have individuals on your payroll that you're caring for, you have X number of families that you're supporting. You have a business that you're providing to the community. One of the first things when we got serious about doing this is, like, if anything should happen to me, my staff knows where the file folder is. You open it up. You call these first 5 people right here. And then they'll be here to help come in and fix anything that needs to be happening on the cemetery side. And then that way my family can focus on my directives of, final care or burial or cremation options. So I cannot stress enough. And when I was doing the MBA program at the Columbia Chamber, I think my classmates were a little bit like, why does she keep saying this? And it's like, y'all don't understand. Y'all don't understand how important this is and how it does matter. And you're dead. You're right. You're not going to have any problems. You're into a whole nother realm. The people who are left behind are the ones that are struggling, seriously struggling, and potentially losing a very profitable business or a contributing business to the community.
Yeah. So what made you decide to get into an accelerator program? I mean, you've been in the industry for a very long time, arguably since you were a child, from what you said. So it seems like you probably knew a lot about what was going on. So what did you feel like, what gaps were there that you felt you needed to fill?
Most entrepreneurs go into business why? Our passion. Passion to serve, passion for a product, passion for a design, passion for whatever. And we're horrible at marketing financial decisions, long-term planning, a succession plan, a strategy. And while, yes, I know the cemetery inside, outside, upside down can help a family make a lot of good decisions, I really needed to have a plan for the future development of this particular cemetery. So the other uniqueness of my cemetery is that we own 32 acres. I only have 4 acres developed. And I have a very clear idea of what I want to add and where I want to go. I just didn't know how to get there. And so in the accelerator program, I have my strategic. As a matter of fact, it's all right here on my wall. So I look at it every single morning when I come in. Did I check that box? Did I get that done? Where am I at in this particular process? And what was really interesting, and I noticed after completing the 2022 program, I was like, why am I so relaxed sliding into 2023? Like, why am I not stressing out about this? And it's like, 2023 is already planned out. I'm working on 2024 now. You know?
Yeah.
So it's like I already know what my necessary goals are. I already know what direction I want to go in. I have a hiring process now that has helped eliminate a lot of problems. So yeah, that accelerator program has been a catalyst in me being able to move forward in the necessary direction.
So for those of us who are just completely ignorant of the industry, I mean, one would think, it's 4 acres and 30 acres and you just fill the rest with rectangles. So what were help us understand some of the decisions that you had to make, and what were the processes you needed help thinking through?
One of the challenges that, and it's not really a challenge, it is a decision. And because cemeteries are forever, the decisions we make today impact not tomorrow, they impact 10 years, 20 years, 100 years down the road. And so I have to look at the best use for my property because land is my commodity. And so what is going to be the best development process? I was in, how much property do I want to dedicate to a pet cemetery? So I opened a 1/4 acre pet cemetery last year. How much property do I want to dedicate to an eco-friendly burial option? And so I have a 1/2 acre dedicated to green burial options. And so those are the elements when you're looking at, when a developer purchases property, they already have a blueprint. We're going to have X miles of road. We're going to put in 700 homes, clear cut everything and call it a day. Mine's a little different. I want to save as much as the natural flora and fauna that I have. And I want to have the community have options as we have more progression in our options. So you may have heard that there's now a body composting, which is becoming more popular. There are about 6 states now that have approved that.
Yeah.
Aqua cremation is now approved, and I think it's in maybe about 25 or 30 states at this point.
What is that?
So aquamation is a reduction in propane or fuel instead of having a retort in the traditional cremation process. This is more of a chemical process, so it is less. It's less on our environment, and it reduces the body down into a much smaller cremated remains.
Wow!
And so there's so many different options, and I have to know what's coming down the pike in the future. And how is this cemetery going to be prepared to handle that with the families?
So you have to check out trend lines like any other
industry.
Yeah. And I mean, are
100%.
Are the trend lines longer, or I mean, does it, depending, let's say retail, it swings very quickly, and then other things like maybe interior design is a little slower. So where is your industry on that scale of how quickly, interests or desires or tastes change?
Well, South Carolina, so you have to take per state, is very slow to adopt anything. So So let's just start with the states themselves.
Okay.
and you have to really take that into consideration. So pretty much here, the options in the state of South Carolina: cremation, which is the propane retort, traditional burial, and eco-friendly burial. Those are pretty much going to be the options available. I would only hope that at some point in time we can add those other components. It has a lot to do with the laws and what governs that particular state.
Okay.
And
so
is there an advocacy group that is educating our policymakers on that, or is that just, how is that driven? How do those laws get changed?
Yeah, so you have to have somebody that's willing to advocate for the needs of the industry. And in each state, there is somebody that does that. And so it's also a big educational component. Some states are more forward thinking than other states. And like Washington State has one of the highest cremation rates ever. And so there's this big disconnect that, family chose cremation because of cost. Well, no, they may not have chose cremation because of cost. It may have been how the family's always done those things. Mm-hmm. Washington State has been able to take that and capitalize on the memorialization portion and having cremated remains at a cemetery that the family can come and visit, where a lot of people elsewhere would either leave them up in a curio cabinet, on a book mantle or a fireplace mantle, or say, well, I'm just going to spread them somewhere. And ultimately, they're not. They're stuck somewhere in a closet, a garage, a storage shed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's us. My dad split in half. So when he was cremated, he wanted to be buried in a cigar box in a moratorium in the church wall that he and my mom joined together. So we had to actually go measure the cigar box and she wanted to be buried in a seashell. So we had to make sure that the seashell she chose and the cigar box would fit into the wall.
Wow.
And then the other half was supposed to be sprinkled at my family's home that they used to have. We used to have in Outer Banks. But that is against the law. We did not know that you cannot, in North Carolina, ocean or the beach, you cannot sprinkle ashes.
Oh, that makes sense.
On the beach. So it's his ashes, is the other half or whatever, are sitting in a box. And my mom, she's now in the state of Washington. She moved and my dad's half of him is with her.
So what are you
in his closet?
Are you just like shopping for beaches, or did it just?
So we're just like, well, we'll figure out a way when we're all together. My siblings, and do we just bury him, sprinkle him somewhere, or do we put the other half in the wall?
Wow.
My mom's even talked about that maybe her ashes get intertwined with his, and she'll figure out another container that because there's only so much room in the wall, so you have to also be mindful of that. So she's now debating, scrap the seashell idea, and does her and my dad's, ashes get intertwined?
Wow.
So yeah, that was, but those were things that, when you talk about death care, those are things that we talked, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. We knew he only had just a few months. So those were, all of us, there's 4 siblings, 4 kids, and my mom and dad, we all talked about it, of what was his wish, what was her wish, I wouldn't have even thought to go to the funeral home. It was more of like, he came out and presented, I would say, urn options, and we all looked at that and we're like, ugh, they're all horrible. And we're like, do you have any, and I just remember, Mom was like, well, Dad, he wanted to be buried in a cigar box. So we went down to his favorite cigar store and...
Did you tell him what it was for?
Yeah, and they knew him. So it was, they found one and it was a, even though it should have been a sad, it was very bonded,
well, see, that's nice.
Process and that we all got to do together. But it was because we had been talking about it for 6-7 months.
I've got the
as a
opposite
family.
My family is why are we talking about that, kind of thing. And it's just, I mean, even I try to get folks to do disaster preparedness. It's like, let's just, nothing's going to happen. We're all going to be fine. And it's like, I mean, they do it, but it's still just and I've been thinking about that. We've got to plan stuff. I mean, even as young folks with young kids, we have to.
You got to plan. You got to have that.
Yeah, but it's really tough.
And on the, my husband's side, his dad passed away, I don't know, about a decade ago. But he had Alzheimer's. And so we knew it was going to be eventual, but it was Pat and I that were driving those conversations. He's one of 7. He's the youngest. He's the estate holder. But he's also the risk manager, the insurance guy. We got to get prepared.
Yeah.
And his mom would do anything, but she's 95. But she has everything detailed out, and
it is a good thing you can do for your family.
It is completely planned.
I want to hop back to what do we do with cremated remains?
Yeah.
And so in many states, once a cremation has occurred, that is considered final disposition. So at that point, pretty much whatever you do is up to you. Now there are laws on you can scatter 5 nautical miles from coast. And what I tell a lot of families is that when you scatter somewhere that's inappropriate, and I'm going to pick on you a little bit on the beach.
Yeah.
We had a situation here. At Lake Murray. Young gentleman was killed on his way back to school. They cremated, and they had this big celebration of life at the beach of Lake Murray and scattered him there. Well, what happens when we pick a spot that now becomes a memorialization spot? Mm-hmm. People are going to leave teddy bears. People are going to leave flowers. People are going to leave. Even in our national monuments in Washington, D.C., on the wall from World War II, or Vietnam, I think, one of those two, they have a lot of problems with people leaving mementos. Well, what do we do with that?
Yeah.
What happens? So, there's no real good conversation of the then what.
Right.
And that's what I sit and talk with families, because and most funeral homes are going to do that whole urn selection. They're very narrow in that whole 3-day process they're going to spend with you.
Yeah.
I actually had a funeral director tell me, he said, somebody says, they asked me if I was going to open up a cemetery, and I looked at him and I said, well, what are your thoughts on that? And he says, no. A funeral home, if there's a situation or a problem, it's a 3-day problem. In a cemetery, it's a lifetime problem.
Yeah.
Because I see the family forever in some generation. And so it's a forever problem, not a 3-day problem.
Right.
So the services we offer here really walk our families from point A all the way through. And I sit with those families and say, well, listen, I understand that, we want to split the remains up and everybody wants a little bit. Here are some options you have. There's some really cool glass and memento things that we can do that look like a piece of art. Mm-hmm. And so it's something that you want to see instead of the little tiny urn or a little bit of this or whatever. So we really sit with our family to get their perspective. Who are they? What are they like? What's their lifestyle?
Yeah.
Because that all matters when you go shopping for those products and services. Yeah. My thing is do you love Walmart, Target, or Macy's? if I know what your shopping behaviors are, then I have a better idea of a product selection that's going to work for you.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is really what we do in focusing on the heart. Intellectually, we know what's going on. I focus on the heart and helping a family come to a good plan that makes sense to them. Because as you both discuss, you both have different approaches, whether it's driven by family, whether it's culture. We have a number of individuals buried in our cemetery that are not from the United States. And so if you talk about death, they don't even want to see their name on their spouse's headstone, because as soon as you put that down, that means I'm next. Well, you are next. We just don't know when.
It's going to happen, right?
It's going to
Hopefully,
happen.
I mean,
That's right.
God, who wants
Well,
to
she
live
was like, well,
forever?
100% mortality rate. Like,
Right.
you're not going to get out of
Modern
it.
technology advances, mortality rate is 100%.
Yeah,
Break that to you.
it needs to be. It needs to be. We don't need to. We don't need to be here for hundreds of years.
Who wants to live to 500?
I don't. You won't even know how to work any of the technology. I mean, it'd be terrible. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, Heather, on the accelerator, you said, you got more structure, you got focused. What were some of those big aha moments that you were like, oh my gosh, thank goodness I'm going through this program? Did you have any of those kind of moments with your cohort?
This is almost embarrassing to say, and I'm just going to say it because, at this point, I know I'm not the only person that has suffered through this. So
I'm one of them. I feel you.
Yeah. So I purchased, my investment in this cemetery. The cemetery was already established. I didn't start it from the ground up. And so when you purchase a business, you're adopting inherited problems that you don't know you didn't have. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so we're going through the financial component. And I'm sitting there, and I have known since day one that the financials were a little bit cattywampus, that they weren't 100%. Yeah. And so I'm sitting there, and we've never been able to figure this out. And in one class, our instructor said, did anybody have an aha moment? And I just threw my hands up, and I said, yes, I have $750,000 of assets missing from my financial statement.
Whoa,
right? Whoa. Does that have an impact on things? Yes, it does.
Oh my gosh.
And so it was like incredibly embarrassing and yet eye-opening at the same point, because from day one, and even though I took over in 2015, I've been here since 2010. Mm-hmm. And so there was a lot of acceptance and already institutional knowledge. And so I never really looked at it. And even when we, the information was there, it just totally missed it. Mm-hmm. And so, in future, I have a couple of future building plans on the books. And do you think that that's going to have an impact when I have to look at potential finance?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think it's going to have an impact when, so something as simple as that, you think you got it until you don't.
Right.
And that was a big, oh, crap moment. And so we were able to rectify that very quickly.
So was it just that they made you sit down and go through all your numbers? How did you reveal that problem?
Yeah. So, and here's the other thing too, is so that, entrepreneurs, I don't know where the thinking comes from. Like, oh, we know everything about our business. No, you don't.
No, you don't.
I hate to tell you, no, you don't. You do not. Like, I know what I need to look at on a regular. And one of the books that we had was Managing by the Numbers.
Right.
What an eye-opening piece of information, because it's like, oh, I can look at my financials and say, do we have enough money for the next 6 months? Where are we at with this? What happens when I don't have that? And so I have a much clearer perspective of my financials now and can make decisions based off of that instead of like, ooh, that's pretty, I really want that.
Right. Right.
And so
that was critical.
Yeah. And that's usually the big ahas that most people have of like, oh, my books are a disaster. Okay, good. I'm not alone.
Yeah.
Like you sit around a room and you're like, okay, everybody is almost like me.
That one was definitely an aha / oh shit combo.
That's a big oh shit. I didn't want to be the first one to say it, but yeah, it is. and here's the thing though. How many entrepreneurs are working 3 months to 6 months away from a bankruptcy or divorce? Mm-hmm. And so I personally don't want to be one of them, because it's going to look really weird that, there's a sign out front that says, going out of business. That would be kind of weird.
Fire sale.
Right, literally.
In some cases, I guess.
Sign up that says vacancy.
All are welcome.
Last piece of property you'll ever own.
That's right. That's good.
So we kind of have to start wrapping up here. But you had said that, so we're recording this right at the end of February 2023, and you said that you felt good going into 2023. Mm-hmm. So what were some of the things that you're looking forward to for the rest of the year, and what of those, are because of the seeds you planted going through that accelerator program?
Two things I'm really excited about are the pet cemetery. So the pet cemetery was developed last summer, and I'm very excited about it. It's starting to pick up and take off. And I had an interesting conversation with somebody who said that, I don't want to be buried anywhere near pets. Well, you don't have to be. It's a whole separate entity within the cemetery. So I'm very excited about that and the marketing that goes along with that. I'm also excited about our eco-friendly burial options because that is something that is new to a perpetual care cemetery. I'm pretty much the only perpetual care cemetery in the state of South Carolina that's doing this. And I have a lot of families from outside of the state who are coming here because of the offerings that we have. And then on the building side is that we're doing some surveying on the property so that I can expand my office and have a much nicer set up for our families and have more options available to them in the usage of the property. And so those are some really big things on our books for this year.
Which, by the way, is gorgeous. That was probably one of the biggest motivators was when I saw the pictures of, it's just
stunning.
Cemeteries come in all shapes and sizes, but it has more of a garden feel.
Right. Like you said, you want to keep the fawn and, and the flora. And keep that natural. I like that.
Yeah, so
it's
folks,
beautiful.
Check out the website.
Yeah, definitely. I had somebody say, well, are you going to put gates up? Most cemeteries have gates. And I'm like, well, I don't have to worry about keeping anybody in. So I don't really see the point of gates. and they were like, well, aren't you concerned about vandalism? And I'm like, if somebody's going to vandalize something, they're going to find a way to do it. Like, why am I going to waste money on that? My families in the community here know that 24/7 for them. And the reason is because not everybody works 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. I have some people who work second or third shifts. I have a mom of a young baby who is buried here who comes out and she gets off work at like 11 o'clock at night. And so she comes and sits with her baby for a little bit to rewind before she goes home. I have an over the road driver who comes and she sits on the front porch, has her little smoke and her beer, and hangs out with her parents, and then she goes home. So that's we really meet the family where they need to be met at instead of telling them, here, this is what you have to do. And we've done some really cool things here with families and help honor them in very unique ways.
So you're innovating within your industry. That's really cool. That's amazing.
I am 100%. I'm all about disrupting and taking a difficult conversation. I'm trying to remember how I said this. Being forced to make difficult decisions during difficult times. I want to take that difficult out of that and let's have that conversation. Let's get it down so that you can live life. This is all about how do we live and what can we do as far as for ourselves and our family and our community. So I'm all about promoting how we live, and this is all part of that process.
Awesome. I think that's a great note to close out on.
I know. I love that.
So for folks to find out more about what you're doing and your business and take a look at those great pictures, where can they find you? Website, social, all that stuff.
GreenhavenMemorialGardens.com is our main webpage. I also have several other, PetHavenandHealing.com, HealingWithHeather.com, and then let's see, on Facebook, it's Heather Leigh, Leigh, and you'll see me with my white ball cap on.
Awesome. And for folks who want more chaos in their lives, Jennifer, where can they find us?
You can find us at all your favorite podcast platform, but if directly, you can go to the OrangeWIP website. That's orange, the color, WIP for workinprogress.com, orangewip.com. Check us out.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Heather. This has been, I've learned so much
I know.
in such a short amount of time. So thank you for sharing your story with us and educating us on
We could keep talking.
something super important.
I know. Hey, well, if you guys get a break and you want to dive in on a whole nother topic about it, I'm here for you. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Heather.